What's up, everybody? It's your favorite team of Justice's favorite nerd, and today we are looking at the Iron Factory completed Decepticon Justice Division, mostly on loan to me from Robert D. I'm going to show you how to get the 3 larger bots into combine mode, as we've covered the transformation on the 2 smaller ones. After we do that, we'll show how all the pieces interlocked, and then we'll go through the combiner. It's a fair amount of work to get to this thing. We have to decide whether or not it's worth it. Let's begin. For Tarn, I have removed the fusion cannon and I have the piece that holds the 2 cannons together separate. I think that you can just maneuver these arms back here, and I also think that I can get away with this hand. If not, I'm just going to take it off and leave it because I don't have the box handy. For the legs, we're going to flip these up, flip the feet up, and kind of keep all of this straight, and the arms will combine, I just got combine on the brain, connect back to the same pegs that they used in alt mode. And then we're going to take this piece here and connect it between the legs. And I might do some of that off camera, but you get the basic gist of it. Also, you want to collapse these treads on the sides of his arms. I forgot that step. Now we're going to get him in combine mode. Just because I happen to have him in this mode from the previous review, we're just going to start here. So you got to take these arms off just with force. For the shoulders, first move the hand back towards the tread, or you'll forget if you're anything like me. Untab this beige or mustard piece. Bring this section up. You can lift that up if it gives you any extra clearance. Spin this around and then connect it back. Once you've done this, take this piece here that's hidden inside of the flap that we moved up and rotate it down. And I might need a spudger, which I can't seem to find one handy, so let's just try our best. There. And then tab this into a little peg that sits inside of there. Flip these 2 pieces down, and then your shoulder pad here comes around towards the back. And I think that's it. Do that for both. You want to take these tracks out, and this time we can kind of really get them up and out of the way. Actually, it might be easier if you first take off the armatures. And once again, they're on a peg, so just wiggle them out. And then you're supposed to rotate the tracks around as well, I believe. So rotate those 180 degrees, get those out to the side, and then you want to open up the chest. That will allow you to remove the head, and then just sort of fillet this open. Collapse the head section so that it fits nicely inside of the little box. My head came off there, but that's how you do it. I'm gonna actually just set this translucent piece to the side. I meant to talk about that on the review. It does make me nervous. I always feel like I'm gonna snap and hit the side of it and break it. I don't know how else they would do it. I'm not blaming them for it, but it does make me nervous. Anyway, you want the head collapsed inside of the missile pod. You then want to get the toes pointed towards the top, and mine has a tendency to snap off of this ball peg. I wonder if, no, it won't work the other way. So just do the best you can there. We'll sort that out later. There, that feels fine. Connect your armatures, but this time you're going upside down. And then just get them out to the side so they're not in your way. All right, let's get him ready. Disconnect the shoulders. Disconnect the bicep. Do that on both sides. Disconnect the legs from the pelvis. Disconnect the pelvis. Disconnect the backpack. Disconnect these pieces. It's a little tricky. And disconnect these pieces. Disconnect the cockpit. Flip these pieces out to the side, and you'll notice the chest. Open up these side panels. Flip the tires, or the tracks, I guess, out, and then this whole piece comes out. Just figuring out where the connection is. Then you can tuck the head in and flip the tires back in. Maybe it's best to do the tires first. Why do I keep calling them tires? Flip the head in. Take the knee and bend it 90 degrees and flip the foot around and collapse it against the calf. And I think that's supposed to fit under there like that. Do that for both. For your shoulder, flip up, flip up. Take this, and that plugs in two ways. One is there, and then this piece flips down and connects into there. And hopefully your little piece here doesn't come off. We'll do that times 2 since it wasn't the smoothest. Flip down. You can see where this piece connects. You gotta straighten it out. There, much better. Take your forearms, open up this flap, flip this one out, which I can tell you is gonna be easier said than done. I'm gonna get a hold of that finger Mac. There you go. Then flip this fist in, flip that in, but you want to capture the wrist joint of the combiner hand as you do so. Once again, for the slow kids in the back, which is where I sat for most of my school career, open up here, see if we can get a finger out, maneuver this fist out, collapse this other fist in. I think I need to have it this way. There. And make sure as you close it that we capture the wrist joint of the combiner hand. For these pieces, collapse the arm around, and then this peg here you want to have close to the blue here. So something like that. Great Googa Mooga. Here is what we have left. Oh, God. I mean, it's just, look, this is for a particular type of person, and that person is not yours truly. But I'm going to show you how it works. Let's begin. Let's start with this piece, because this is one of the ones I find most challenging. This chest piece needs to come off. It's a tight connection, so much like a lot of this stuff, right? So just be mindful when you do that. Then take Tarn. He goes in upside down and he connects with the treads of the tracks into those peg holes here in these little side wings. So just do your best. It goes in this way, I'm sorry, I'm an idiot. To kind of get it in there and then connect the treads into those tabs. Now, that worked relatively easy for me, but I can tell you it hasn't always. And then close up this bit here down at the bottom. You can then take the faux chest and slide that on to these two tabs here, and that should make your connection. Not too shabby. Take Tarn's fusion cannons and fold them in half. Once you've done so, they will slide on to these pegs, and I prefer this configuration. I'm not exactly sure what the right one is necessarily, but the right one is whatever you want it to be. But I like the little painted detail on the outside and the smaller cannon over top of the larger. That's my preference. Then you're almost done. Take this tab goes into the back, and then it also tabs into the side here, and I'll tell you, it's a little tricky. And then the same thing is done with the pelvis piece. Once again, just make sure the missiles are facing towards the back, and then this will slide in. Now, you can take that covering that you removed, slide it here to cover up the face of Helix, and then, whoa, sorry about that, and then take that and plug it right into his backside. All right, so then we want these two tabs in the bottom of the chest to go into those two holes in the abdomen, and these tabs that come out at like his flank to go into the corresponding ones there. And this one eats me up, so I might have to do this off camera, but I am going to try my best. There it is. Good grief. It's like you feel like you're applying an inappropriate amount of pressure, and then it gives. Take your foot piece, take your shoe cover, slide that on to that peg. Then you want to take this bar part, I don't even know what to call this, a calf, I suppose, and you want this to go, and I think you want the part that hinges to be facing towards the inside. And it's not easy. There. Same on this side. Shoe cover sits down on there. Forgive the lack of focus. And then you want to take your combiner port and there, jam it in, so to speak. This piece here, it sits right behind the cannon on the toe. You're gonna take this part with the collapsed little baby arm and tab that in, or slide that in there. Then take this piece and wrap it around and connect to the tab. Once again, ×2. So we're sliding in and we're wrapping around. Then you can connect the shin guards, and you just want the 2 holes to be towards the top and the 2 spikes to kind of be towards the bottom. Take the shoulder, make sure that the shoulder pad is facing towards the back of however you want the arms to be, and then just connect the appropriate hand. You may need to do some swiveling once you've done so. Same for the other side. And what you're left with is this assortment. So go ahead and start combining. And I have these pieces, they're not right. I got this wrong somehow. I'm gonna have to mess with this some. But go ahead and start combining. Let's see if that makes any difference. Oh yeah, that worked better. So just, oh, I thought it did. Yeah, make sure that you have this angle here right on that knee pad, because it's a odd, awkward shaped little ball peg. Connect your arms. Connect your fusion cannon. Mine isn't collapsed quite right. I couldn't get it right, and I didn't feel like breaking Robert's toy. Have him hold his gun, pegging into the palm there, wrapping the fingers around, and he is done. I'll get him cleaned up. We'll take a look at him. Sheesh. So let's talk about him. I've removed the guns and weapons in order to better kind of address the articulation. So the head is on a ball peg, which is a strange choice. The neck flap does hinge, so you can get some good down, which matters most with a figure this size for the scale. Limited up, I think that's fine. It has light piping for the eyes, which I think is a really poor choice. I can't even really get it to work with a light right over it, you know? So I think that's a poor choice. This area here on the figure is dark, and it doesn't kind of like photograph well or present well. I think some like really bright kind of magnetic in the sense of draw your eye to it, metallic red paint would have looked great there. But it's just so deeply recessed, it doesn't look good. Now the gold looks great and the sculpt is fantastic. I love the blue break up here in the chest with the silver spike sticking through, and the chest plate looks beautiful as well and does help break up a lot of this dark color palette at the top. So I'm good with all that. Also, the guns will swivel back and forth and swivel around depending on how you want them to look. The chest flaps do move so that you can use the swivel on the shoulders. The shoulders are basically universals with a soft ratchet here. However, there's an additional hinge inside of the shoulder, which will get you 90 degrees out at the very least. It also means that you can get a reverse butterfly. That's what happens when they put it in the shoulder. So, bicep swivel. You have a single hinged elbow that gets you 90 degrees here. However, if you untab that connection, it does get you a double hinged elbow, and that does work nice. The problem is like on this one, it's fine. On this one, once it's disconnected, it's loose as a goose. But once you connect it back in, it's fine. It's just when you disconnect that second hinge. So I think it's an easy enough of a workaround. I'm not going to take too much time with the paint accents because most of them we've already discussed as we've gone through the other figures. I will talk about the color as a whole, but that'll be towards the end. So, bicep swivel, did we do that? I hope so. Elbow, we did that. Wrist swivel. We have the thumb on a base ball peg, which comes out to a secondary hinge. And then we have, actually, and is that a, yes, so where the ball peg meets the first finger is a hinge, and then there's a secondary hinge on the thumb, so fully articulated. Same goes for the rest of the fingers. Ball peg at the base knuckle, and then one additional hinge, it looks like, for each additional, but the single hinge is the full range. So that's like engineered nicely. Yeah, really well done. Same for the other side. For the waist, we do have the waist swivel. This one kneecap is always falling off. Maybe I don't have it right. We do have the waist swivel. I did untab my backpack. It's harder to get the waist swivel if you're not using the, and you don't need this backpack either. You know, to be fair, it's like only if you want it to be 100% inclusive of all the kind of bits and parts and all that nonsense. In fact, I'm going to leave it off for now. You have the ab crunch. Now, the ab crunch, even if you have stuff like the butt flap in, if you utilize the ab crunch, then you'll be able to get the waist swivel no problem, and then you can kind of adjust back. All right, so that works well. Then we have the hips. They're the same hips that were on Merak. Soft ratcheted out to the side. Oh, and look at that. I got it to clear that one. I don't know how. Because it doesn't want to clear. You see, design-wise, I mean, not that you needed to go beyond that, but that's a great range for a combiner anyway, but it doesn't want to clear that one little lip there. So, but I got it for a second. And then forward is a little bit limited, but I haven't had any issues with it, and I'll show you when we do final thoughts. Thigh swivel. We have a double hinge knee that gets you 90 degrees. And then we have ankle tilt up, ankle tilt down, and an insane rocker. So, and then when you have the armatures here. So they'll do the same articulation as they do on the other one, but just at a lower level. You can't really get them up and over. They're not long enough. So in order to kind of have them on display, you got to have them here. But you could also take them off the ball peg there. So you can do a lot with this, you know, deco-wise in order to kind of suit your needs. Like if I take off, you know, these tracks here. Please don't break. Okay, I'm not going to take off these tracks, but if I took off, you can look on this side. We'll show it that way. So, right? So on this side, I have the tracks hanging down, and I have the arm. You can have that look. On this side, I've removed both, and you can have that look. You can also remove this butt flap here. There's a lot you can take off of this thing if you want to make it look a certain way. It just has the ability to kind of use all of the components integrated, which I think is ultimately, you know, kind of nice. But it allows for a little bit of customization in a way, you know, where you can have it sort of suit your needs. So let me kind of get him cleaned up again now that we've gone over articulation. We'll go over a little bit of scale, and then we'll talk some final thoughts. Size comparison wise, I'm not really sure what's appropriate, but here he is next to an old school Iron Factory legend, a Hasbro legend, and an MP11. So, you know, a little bit taller than an MP Seeker, which I think is a decent enough size. You could also extend the thighs if you wanted, but I think proportionately, the way that the instructions suggest is the best way. Final thoughts wise, let's talk about the negatives. That one kneecap and the kind of the way the knees have to be, I don't think it's totally fair to gig them on because obviously the one is working well. However, the fact that I can't get the other one to sit quite right does say something about the tolerances of the ball peg in relationship to how easy it should be for the knees to be manipulated. I don't really have a whole lot negative to say about this. I understand that most of my issues with this are completely optional. That's the beautiful thing about it. For instance, I don't like that all of the stuff hangs off of them, and that as a result, some of the articulation becomes clumsy, clunky, and at the very least unprofessional. However, most of that stuff you can just simply take off. And the moment that you do, it's fine. So how could I possibly be upset about that? It's an option, right? For people that want all the things to be integrated, it's there. For people that don't care about that sort of thing and care mostly about aesthetics, it too is there. It is a bit of a bear to kind of get them combined just because of all the moving pieces and whatnot, and the fact that figures had to explode in order to kind of work, but at the same time, there's a puzzle aspect to that that's kind of enjoyable, challenging, and rewarding. Lastly, for my negatives, there's something about the color palette that's off-putting to me. Purely subjective, 1010%, but it is something that I feel. It's almost too uniformed, maybe, for a combiner. Like, I'm used to, like, you know, with very few exceptions like Devastator and Predaking, I'm used to most of the combiners being very colorful, but there is also something about the colors being complementary to one another, where these colors I don't feel like are, because the characters weren't intended to combine, so the color palette wasn't taken into account when creating the characters. But once again, that's entirely subjective. And I also had to recognize that given that they weren't supposed to combine, and that Iron Factory willed away, they did somehow create a combiner that looks like it belongs in some sort of fiction. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't look fan-made. It looks purposeful. Which brings me to my positive. The major thing about my positive is that almost every criticism I have in regard to my negatives can be spun in a positive light, which I'm not sure I've ever experienced before. On top of that, the materials are great. It's super sturdy, holds up extremely well, super posable, fun to pose, very articulated. The paint looks great, far sturdier than most Masterpiece options in regard to combiners. And the individual modes, here's the kicker. The individual modes don't really suffer because of its combining element. A lot of times when things aren't supposed to combine, i.e. the Dinobots, and we see companies take a stab at it, they end up making all sorts of aesthetic sacrifices in order to make the gimmick element, which was never there in the first place, work properly. The beautiful thing about this, it doesn't. The individual elements work great, but they have to explode in order to make this combiner. But the combiner looks pretty good overall as well. So no sacrifices are really made. You can kind of make a few arguments for a few minor sacrifices here and there, but by and large, it pretty much does all the modes justice. An extremely well done set. I'm not sure it's worth the trouble of combining it or including the combiner feature cost-wise, but interesting and intriguing and fun nonetheless. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.